Now, new rules that come into force later this year will give drivers who use private car parks a 10-minute grace period after their ticket expires before they face charges for overstaying.
It's all part of a new code of practice that's being introduced from October. But some campaigners say it doesn't go far enough. Our reporter Natalie Bell has spoken to people who've previously been fined.
Many drivers will have experienced receiving one of these from a private car parking firm. But what's got people angry is the amount they're being charged and a system which means they feel they're not able to challenge it.
This is Eastgate Car Park in Louth, run by Euro Car Parks. They're trying to actually say that I didn't pay for parking on the day in question. This is my parking ticket. This was the machine that I got my parking ticket from.
Rachel is being fined £100 after parking in this private car park in Louth. She'd paid for a ticket, but the machine didn't recognise the last 3 digits of her car registration.
It's just really not fair. It feels like an absolute con. An absolute con. Taking this car park away from me because I won't use it anymore. I refuse to use it because of what I've been through.
Asa was fined £270 for overstaying in the Taco Bell car park in Hull.
We were there for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then a year later I get a letter saying that the bailiffs are going to come to remove property because of a parking fine. I tried my best to get through, but it had escalated so far that they ended up putting a CCJ on my credit report. The fact that they can do that over something like this, I think it's ridiculous. It's so out of proportion for what's actually happened. The people at Taco Bell were actually really great, but it was out at the time that Taco Bell could do anything about it.
We contacted Euro Car Parks but heard nothing back. Creative Car Park say they give drivers multiple opportunities to appeal a parking notice. The British Parking Association say most drivers have the right to contest a parking ticket.
The most important thing to remember is that if you receive a parking ticket, don't ignore it.
Rules are set to change for private car parks with a new code of practice coming into force, but campaigners say that falls short of the standards needed to protect drivers.
It needs to be regulated. There's a lot of stress on you. You feel like your hands are tied and you're fighting a losing battle, really.
People need to be more aware of what they're entering into when they enter these car parks, and they need to stand up for themselves and they need to fight.
Natalie Bell reporting there. Let's talk now to Simon Williams from the RAC. He joins us now. Morning to you. And the word that jumped out in all of those interviews there was fairness. People just saying it's just not fair. They're trying to do the right thing, but maybe the rules are confusing. They're a few minutes late and then they're hit with a big fine that they find very difficult to get rid of.
Yes, this is a long-standing problem. And we're really quite frustrated by this new code coming from the private parking industry, because back in 2019, an Act of Parliament was passed creating the Private Parking Code of Practice. Yet, 5 years later, we still don't have that code in force. The government are working on it, but unfortunately, members of the private parking community and some debt recovery companies challenged that code legally, took it to judicial review, which is why we still don't have it in force. Now, lo and behold, the private parking industry have launched their own code, which does have some good points in it, but it really doesn't go as far as the official government code will have. We sit on a working party with other members of the motoring industry trying to get this code across the line. And this will be far fairer for drivers going forward and hopefully put an end to some of these stories which we're hearing today.
Simon, the code that you mentioned, a spokesperson for the British Parking Association has said their new code is a key milestone towards delivering fairer and more consistent parking standards for drivers. Do you think that's a fair comment?
They could have done this years ago, to be honest. But of course, the official government-backed private parking code is all about protecting the interests of drivers and making sure consumers are treated fairly, so we don't have instances like we've just heard. Whereas, of course, code is all about looking after the private parking companies, because obviously trying to make sure they don't any of the money they generate. The official code puts in a cap on penalty charge. This one does. We will have that as a lower fee. It also puts a cap on debt recovery fees, crucially, because if you make a mistake and then you're hit with one of these notices. Then all of a sudden you get a notice saying that you're going to be chased by a debt recovery company, which is pretty horrific. Also, crucially, it puts in place a single independent appeal service, so everyone has the right to a proper appeal. It also puts in rules on the way private parking companies operate, and if they have to get a certificate to operate, and if they don't obey that, they could lose the right to operate. Now, those things you won't find in the official, the unofficial parking industry code.
Simon, really good to talk to you. Thank you. And as you'd expect, loads of people getting in touch with us this morning about this. Everyone says, I ended up with a county court judgment for a parking ticket I knew nothing about. The parking company had the first line of the address wrong, so didn't get any of the paperwork, but then couldn't use it as a defence, saying the £30 fine has now racked up to a £600 bill so far.
Yes, and one of the drivers in the piece that we saw also had a CCJ as well. And Stella from Ipswich says she was issued a £100 fine for a 2-minute delay in displaying her ticket, and she tried to appeal, but she said the appeal process is ludicrous, as you can't talk to anyone and have to do it via an online service. And if you write your email address wrong, they'll disregard your appeal and direct you to the payment page. Stella says she's still awaiting a response.
Yeah, a lot of you finding it really difficult if you're away, certainly in the UK. Paul from Suffolk saying, I'll no longer go to Cornwall because so many of the car parks there are now run by a private car parking company. He says even locals up in arms about their practices. Not only are the drivers persecuted, but local businesses losing out on business in the long run. And
Brian from Romford says he received a £100 fine for parking at a pub car park, and he said there were no signs to indicate any charges for parking. So thank you for all the comments you've sent in so far. That's just a small fraction of what we've heard from you. This really gets people talking, understandably.